The silent witness. The trial chamber stretched before them like a cathedral of judgment, its crystalline walls humming with the accumulated weight of 1,000 verdicts. Zara Chen sat perfectly still in the witness dock, her dark eyes fixed on the polished floor beneath her feet. The silence around her was deafening, broken only by the soft whisper of recycled air and the occasional rustle of ceremonial robes. "State your name for the record," commanded High Arbitrator Velkin, his voice echoing to the vast chamber with the authority of someone who had never been questioned. His 4 arms gestured dismissively at the human girl, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience to be processed and forgotten. Zara's lips remained sealed. Her fingers, calloused from years of manual labor on the mining colonies, gripped the edge of the witness stand until her knuckles turned white. The observers in the gallery leaned forward, their various alien forms creating a tapestry of curiosity and contempt. "I asked you a question, Deathworlder." Velkin's tone sharpened, and several of his aides' tentacles twitched nervously. The term Deathworlder rolled off his tongue like a curse, dripping with the kind of disdain reserved for something found on the bottom of one's shoe. Still, Zara said nothing. Her breathing was measured, controlled, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The silence stretched on, becoming almost tangible, until nervous coughs began to ripple through the assembled crowd. Defense Advocate Krim cleared his throat, his scaled hide shifting from blue to a worried green. "Your Honor, my client has been through considerable trauma. Perhaps we could—" "Silence!" Velkin's voice boomed across the chamber, causing several of the smaller species to flinch. "This trial will proceed according to galactic law, not the whims of some primitive world spawn." Zara's eyes flicked up for just a moment, meeting Velkin's gaze with an intensity that made the High Arbitrator's secondary heart skip a beat. There was something there, something that made his skin crawl despite his position of power. Then, just as quickly, her gaze returned to the floor. Prosecutor Vex stepped forward, his insectoid form clicking against the marble floor with each movement. His compound eyes glittered with malicious glee as he approached the witness stand. "Your Honor, the defendant's refusal to speak is clearly an admission of guilt. The charges are simple: aggravated assault against Warlord Thane Blackclaw, destruction of property, and violation of the peace accords." A murmur ran through the gallery. Warlord Thane Blackclaw, the self-proclaimed apex warlord of the Outer Rim, was a legend in his own mind and a terror to everyone else. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with muscles that could crush steel and a temper that could melt durasteel, he had built his reputation on the broken bodies of those who dared to oppose him. "The evidence is overwhelming," Vex continued, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Security footage shows a defendant attacking the warlord without provocation in the trade district of Station Omega-7. The damages to the surrounding area are extensive, and the medical bills for the warlord's injuries are astronomical." At this, Zara's shoulders began to shake. The gallery fell silent, thinking she might be crying. But then, a sound escaped her lips that chilled everyone present to their core: laughter. Not the innocent giggle of a child, but the dark, bitter laugh of someone who had seen too much and lost everything. "Oh, that's rich," Zara finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of worlds. "Medical bills for that overgrown lizard. Tell me, prosecutor, did those medical bills include therapy for his bruised ego?" The chamber erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. High Arbitrator Velkin slammed his gavel with such force that cracks appeared in the marble beneath it. "Order! Order in this court." Zara stood slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. Despite being barely 5.5 feet tall, she seemed to command the entire room with her presence. "You want to know what happened on Station Omega-7? Fine, I'll tell you what happened." Her voice carried across the chamber like a blade through silk, cutting through the noise and commanding absolute attention. "I was shopping for supplies, basic necessities for a mining operation that keeps half the galaxy fed and powered. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just trying to live my life in peace." Defense Advocate Krim tried to signal her to stop, but Zara was beyond caring about legal strategy now. The words had been bottled up inside her for weeks, fermenting into something potent and dangerous. "Then your precious warlord decided to have some fun," she continued, her tone becoming conversational, almost friendly. See, he had this brilliant idea that a human girl would make excellent entertainment for his crew. Something about showing the galaxy what happens to Deathworlders who forget their place. The gallery was dead silent now, hanging on every word. Even the court reporters had stopped typing, their various appendages frozen over their keyboards. He grabbed my arm, Zara said, rolling up her sleeve to reveal a series of deep, purplish bruises in the shape of massive claws. Called me his new pet. Said he was going to break me in properly. Teach me how to serve real warriors. Prosecutor Vex's antenna twitched nervously. Your Honor, this is clearly an attempt to... Shut up. Zara's voice cut through his objection like a plasma torch through paper. You wanted to hear my testimony. You're going to hear all of it. She walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. So there I was, being manhandled by this overgrown gecko who thinks his size makes him invincible. His crew was laughing, placing bets on how long it would take him to break me. The station security was conveniently looking the other way. Her laugh returned, darker now, tinged with something that made the bravest warriors in the gallery shift uncomfortably in their seats. They forgot one tiny detail, one little fact that seems to slip past most of you enlightened species. And what would that be? High Arbitrator Velkin asked. Despite himself, Zara's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Humans don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive. But we don't break. And when you push us too far, when you threaten everything we hold dear, we don't just fight back. We end the threat permanently. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Even the air recycling system seemed to hold its breath. So, when your apex warlord decided to drag me into that alley, when he started tearing at my clothes while his crew cheered him on, when he whispered in my ear about all the creative ways he was going to hurt me, Zara paused, her eyes scanning the faces of the gallery. I made a decision. What decision? Velkin's voice was barely a whisper. I decided that Thane Blackclaw had lived long enough. The silence that followed was so complete that the sound of heartbeats seemed thunderous. Several of the smaller species had begun to hyperventilate, their survival instincts screaming at them to flee. The security footage your prosecutor is so fond of shows the aftermath, Zara continued, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. What it doesn't show is the 15 minutes before that. The threats, the assault, the attempted rape. Funny how that part got deleted from the official record. Prosecutor Vex's exoskeleton had shifted to a sickly yellow color. Your Honor, there is no evidence of... Of course there isn't. Zara laughed again, the sound sending chills down everyone's spine. Station Omega 7 is in Blackclaw's territory. His people control the security systems. They control the courts. They control everything. She turned to face the gallery, her dark eyes scanning the sea of alien faces. Or they did, until a 5'0" human girl decided she'd had enough of their games. You're claiming self-defense? High Arbitrator Velkin asked, though his voice lacked its earlier authority. I'm claiming justice, Zara replied, her voice steady as stone. Something this court seems to have forgotten the meaning of. The chamber erupted into chaos. Shouts of outrage mixed with nervous laughter and whispered conversations. Several of the gallery observers had begun to edge toward the exits, their instincts warning them that something dangerous was about to happen. Order! Velkin slammed his gavel repeatedly, but the sound was lost in the din. Order, or I'll have this chamber cleared. Zara raised her hand, and somehow, impossibly, the chamber fell silent. The gesture was simple, unthreatening, but it carried with it an authority that transcended species or position. Before this trial continues, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, I think there's someone who wants to address the court. All eyes turned to the main entrance, where a figure was slowly making its way down the center aisle. The observers gasped and scrambled out of the way as they recognized the newcomer. It was Thane Blackclaw himself. The apex warlord was a shadow of his former self. His usually pristine scales were dull and cracked, his massive frame supported by a powered exoskeleton that whined with each labored step. His left arm hung useless at his side, and his right leg was clearly artificial, clicking against the marble floor with each movement. but it was his eyes that truly showed the extent of his injuries. Once bright yellow with predatory intelligence, they now held the hollow, haunted look of someone who had stared into the abyss and found something staring back. Blackclaw's voice was a whisper, a far cry from the booming roar that had once struck fear into the hearts of entire systems. I withdraw all charges. The chamber exploded into pandemonium. High Arbitrator Velkin's gavel cracked under the force of his strikes as he tried to restore order. Prosecutor Vex's mandibles clicked frantically as he attempted to process this unexpected development. "You can't!" Vex screeched, his voice rising above the chaos. "The charges are filed by the state. You don't have the authority to." "I have the authority." Blackclaw's voice gained strength, though it still carried an undertone of pain. "As the primary witness and victim of the alleged crimes, I invoke my right under Article 47 of the Galactic Code to withdraw all charges." Zara watched the proceedings with the same quiet intensity she had shown throughout the trial. Her expression hadn't changed, but there was something in her eyes now, a glimmer of satisfaction that hadn't been there before. "Warlord Blackclaw." High Arbitrator Velkin managed to gain control of his voice, though his hands shook as he gripped his gavel. "This is highly irregular. Are you certain you wish to withdraw these charges?" Blackclaw's gaze found Zara across the chamber. For a moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or a recognition of a debt that could never be repaid. "I am certain," Blackclaw said, his voice firm despite his obvious pain. "I have no desire to pursue this matter further." The silence that followed was pregnant with unspoken questions. The gallery watched in fascination as the most feared warlord in the Outer Rim stood before them, broken and defeated, withdrawing charges against a human girl who barely came up to his chest. "Very well," Velkin finally said, his voice hollow. "In light of the withdrawal of charges by the primary witness, this court has no choice but to dismiss all charges against the defendant." He raised his gavel, but before he could bring it down, Zara spoke one last time. "Thank you, Your Honor, but I'm not done yet." The crushing truth. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, freezing every being in the chamber mid-breath. High Arbitrator Velkin's gavel remained suspended above his desk, trembling in his grip as if it had suddenly become too heavy to bear. "What do you mean you're not done?" Velkin's voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear that was beginning to creep into his hearts. Zara smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the kind of smile that predators wore when they'd finally cornered their prey. "I mean, this trial has been a farce from the beginning. A carefully orchestrated show designed to make an example of me. But you've made one crucial mistake." She turned to face the gallery, her voice rising to carry to every corner of the chamber. "You've given me a platform, a stage. And now, everyone in the galaxy is watching." Indeed, the trial was being broadcast live across 17 systems, with viewership numbers climbing by the millions every minute. News feeds were lighting up with commentary, analysis, and speculation about the mysterious human girl who had somehow brought the infamous Thane Blackclaw to his knees. "The real crime here," Zara continued, her voice taking on the cadence of seasoned prosecutor, "isn't what I did to that overgrown lizard. The real crime is what's been happening in this courtroom for the past 3 hours." Defense advocate Krim tried to intervene, his scaled hide shifting to a panicked orange. "Zara, please, I strongly advise." "Advise what?" Zara's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "That I stay quiet? That I let them sweep this under the rug like they've swept everything else? No, Krim, not this time." She walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing like gunshots in the oppressive silence. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted species, what you witnessed today is a perfect example of why the Galactic Coalition is failing. Why entire systems are declaring independence. Why the Outer Rim worlds are in open rebellion. Prosecutor Vex's exoskeleton had gone completely yellow now, the color of fear and submission. Your Honor, I object. This is not relevant to... Relevant. Zara's voice rose to a shout that made the crystalline walls ring like bells. You want to talk about relevant? Let me tell you what's relevant. She pointed directly at High Arbitrator Velkin, her finger steady as a laser sight. You've been taking bribes from Blackclaw's organization for the past 5 years. Credits, rare minerals, and favors in exchange for looking the other way when his crew commits atrocities. The chamber erupted into chaos. But Zara's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. You want proof? Check the financial records of the Velkin Family Trust. Specifically, the deposits that coincide with dismissed charges against Blackclaw's crew. Velkin's face had gone pale, his forearms trembling as he gripped his desk. These are baseless accusations. You demand nothing. Zara's voice was cold as the void between stars. You've lost that right. She turned to Prosecutor Vex, who was now backing away from her as if she carried a contagious disease. And you clicking coward. You've been in on it from the beginning. Every fabricated charge, every suppressed evidence file, every witness who mysteriously disappeared before they could testify. This is preposterous. Vex's mandibles clicked frantically. I am a respected officer of the court. I have dedicated my life to justice. Justice. Zara's laugh was bitter as poison. You wouldn't recognize justice if it bit you on your segmented rear end. You've been running a protection racket, using the court system as your personal enforcement arm. The gallery was in complete uproar now, with various species shouting accusations and denials in dozens of different languages. Several of the observers had begun to stream toward the exits, while others were frantically recording everything on their personal devices. But you want to know the really funny part? Zara continued, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. All of this could have been avoided if you just left me alone. She walked over to where Thane Blackclaw sat, the broken warlord avoiding her gaze like a scolded child. Tell them, Thane, tell them what really happened that day. Blackclaw's voice was barely a whisper. I can't, or won't. Zara's tone was conversational, almost friendly, but there was steel beneath the silk. Because I can tell them. I can tell them about the 17 other women you've assaulted in the past year. I can tell them about the mass graves on Kepler 7. I can tell them about the slave markets you've been running. The chamber fell silent again, the weight of her words pressing down on everyone present like a physical force. But most importantly, Zara continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the vast room, I can tell them exactly what I did to you in that alley. Blackclaw's entire body began to shake, his artificial leg clicking against the floor in an erratic rhythm. Please don't. Don't what? Zara's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Don't tell them how the mighty Apex, Warlord wet himself when he realized what he was dealing with. Don't tell them how you begged for mercy while I slowly, methodically broke every bone in your body. She leaned closer to the trembling warlord, her voice dropping to a level that only he could hear. Don't tell them how you screamed for your mother in that pathetic little language of yours when I showed you what real pain feels like. Blackclaw's breathing had become labored, his eyes wide with terror, as if he were reliving that moment all over again. The security footage shows me taking one step, Zara announced to the chamber, her voice rising again. One single step, and suddenly the great Thane Blackclaw is a broken mess on the ground. You want to know how that happened? She turned back to the gallery, her dark eyes scanning the sea of alien faces. It happened because every human is a Deathworlder. Every single one of us is the product of a planet that has spent millions of years trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate change. Our world has thrown everything at us, and we've survived. Her voice began to rise, taking on the cadence of sermon. We've survived ice ages that would freeze your blood solid. We've survived plagues that would wipe out entire star systems. We've survived predators that make your worst nightmares look like house pets. The chamber was completely silent now, every being present hanging on her every word. And through it all, we've learned one fundamental truth, Zara continued, her voice carrying the weight of eons. Survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. It's about being the most adaptable, the most stubborn, the most willing to do whatever it takes to protect what you love. She walked back to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. That day on Station Omega 7, when Blackclaw decided to make me his plaything, he thought he was dealing with a helpless victim. What he was actually dealing with was 4 billion years of evolution, distilled into one very angry human being. Zara stopped directly in front of the witness stand, her gaze sweeping across the assembled crowd. You want to know what that one step was? It was me deciding that enough was enough, that I was done being afraid, done being the victim, done letting people like him think they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. She raised her foot slightly, and several of the smaller species in the gallery actually flinched. "This," she said, bringing her foot down on the marble floor with a sound like thunder, "is what happens when you push a Deathworlder too far." The crack that appeared in the floor wasn't large, but it was visible to everyone in the chamber. A hairline fracture that spread out from where her foot had touched the marble, creating a spider web of damage that somehow seemed to encompass the entire court system. "That's impossible," Prosecutor Vex whispered, his compound eyes fixed on the crack in the floor. "The floor is reinforced duraplast. It can withstand starship impacts." "Can it?" Zara's voice was mild, conversational. "Or has it just been weakened by years of corruption, like everything else in this place?" She turned to High Arbitrator Velkin, who was staring at the crack with the expression of someone watching their world collapse. "You've built this entire system on the assumption that might makes right, that the strong can do whatever they want to the weak. But you forgot something important." "What?" Velkin's voice was barely audible. "You forgot that weakness is relative," Zara replied, her smile returning, "and that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor." She walked over to the prosecutor's table, where Vex was frantically trying to back away from her. "The evidence you've been suppressing, the witnesses you've been silencing, the truth you've been hiding, it's all going to come out now. Every dirty deal, every covered-up atrocity, every innocent being who suffered because you decided justice wasn't profitable enough." Vex's exoskeleton had gone completely transparent now, a sign of absolute terror in his species. "You can't prove any of this. These are just wild accusations." "Can I?" Zara reached into her jacket and pulled out a small data pad. "This contains complete financial records, communication logs, and security footage from the past 5 years. Everything I need to bury this entire corrupt system." The chamber erupted into chaos again as the implications sank in. High Arbitrator Velkin was shouting orders at his security staff, but they seemed reluctant to approach the small human girl who had just casually threatened to bring down the entire court system. "How?" Velkin's voice cut through the noise. "How did you get access to classified information?" Zara's laugh was genuinely amused now. "You really don't understand, do you? You think this is about me, about one human girl getting revenge on the system that failed her. But it's so much bigger than that." She held up the data pad, and the chaos in the chamber gradually died down as everyone focused on the small device. "This isn't just about Station Omega-7. This is about every human colony that's been exploited, every death world that's been strip-mined, every family that's been destroyed by your corrupt system. The Human Colonial Alliance has been watching you," she continued, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "documenting every crime, every cover-up, every innocent being who suffered because you decided their lives weren't worth protecting." High Arbitrator Velkin's face had gone completely pale. "The HCA is a terrorist organization. They have no standing in this court." "Terrorist organization?" Zara's eyebrows rose. "Is that what you call people who refuse to be victims? People who stand up to bullies and corruption?" She walked back to the center of the chamber, her voice rising to carry to every corner of the vast room. "Let me tell you what the Human Colonial Alliance really is. It's every human who's ever been pushed around by someone bigger and stronger. It's every family who's lost someone to the greed and corruption of the coalition. It's every world that's been told to shut up and be grateful for the privilege of being exploited." The gallery was completely silent now, the weight of her words pressing down on everyone present. "And now," Zara continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more authority than a shout, "it's Judgment Day." She activated the data pad, and holographic displays sprang to life throughout the chamber. Financial records, communication logs, security footage, all of it damning evidence of the corruption that had infected the highest levels of the galactic coalition. "Everything you've done, Every crime you committed, every innocent being you failed to protect, it's all here, Zara announced, her voice carrying the weight of divine justice. And it's being broadcast live to 17 systems right now. The chaos that followed was beyond description. High Arbitrator Velkin was screaming orders at his security staff, but they were too busy trying to process the evidence scrolling past their eyes to obey. Prosecutor Vex had collapsed into a chittering heap, his exoskeleton flashing through every color in the spectrum as his nervous system overloaded. Through it all, Zara stood calmly in the center of the chamber, watching the corrupt system she had just exposed tear itself apart. "You wanted to make an example of me," she said, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "Congratulations. You've succeeded. The entire galaxy is watching. They're seeing what happens when you push a Deathworlder too far." She turned to face the main camera, her dark eyes staring directly into the lens. "My name is Zara Chen. I'm a human being from the mining colonies of Kepler-7, and I'm here to tell you that we're done being afraid. We're done being victims. We're done letting people like them think they can do whatever they want without consequences." The crack in the floor continued to spread, spider webbing out from where she had stepped. But now it seemed symbolic of something much larger, the fractures appearing in a corrupt system that had finally been exposed to the light. "The age of the bully is over," Zara announced, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "The age of justice has begun." She walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the chaos-filled chamber. As she reached the doors, she turned back one final time. "Oh, and Thane," she called out to the broken warlord, who was still trembling in his seat. "Next time you see a human girl walking alone, remember this moment. Remember what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." With that, she stepped through the doors and vanished into the corridor beyond, leaving behind a chamber full of broken beings and a galaxy that would never be the same. The trial of Zara Chen was over. The revolution had just begun.